Oh my god. Hello guys, good morning. How are you? Welcome to one more live of us. Hello Douglas. Hello. Wait, let me invite you. Hi teacher, how are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good. How can I call you?
Stu. Stu is perfect.
Stu. Stu. So when you say you're sensei, it means you also give like martial arts or
Sensei
just
is
master?
sensei is like as many meanings in Japan, but it also means teacher. Is what they call teachers. So it's just what
Oh,
students call me at my school.
I didn't know this. So
Mm.
instead of teacher, you say sensei for any degree of teacher, yeah?
Yeah, but it basically it's got quite an in-depth meaning. It can also refer to like professor, or like you say, many people abroad know the master of some kind of karate or some kind of sport. But yeah, it's used just for someone who don't know how to put it across correctly because the translation, but like someone who's helping someone else, but they're like a higher level. Though I don't think of myself like that, but that's just the image that they give.
Yeah, someone say Brazilian English. Yeah, my English is Brazilian.
Hi, Charlie.
So it's very good to have you here. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, anytime.
You don't sleep, I can see. Yeah, I was watching
Yeah,
your live
sorry. Yeah, you
yesterday.
saw me this morning. Yeah, I was a bit tired this morning, but today and right now I am good. I put out probably my best post about 2 minutes ago, so I'm pumped. I'm very excited.
Oh, thank you. Was it about your last post?
It's about how we think of ourselves as learners, and it's about how native speakers make many mistakes when they speak, and that we worry too much about very small mistakes that no one remembers. So
Oh, which is very interesting subject to start this live, yeah?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of matched. I don't know whether it's because we were suggesting that we talk about confidence, but it just came to me. I had to write it down and then correct all the grammar and then put it out. So yeah.
Yeah, also as a native, you need to correct your grammar as well, yeah?
Yeah, well, I'm not like massively worried about that. I think I've got like a theory that in 50 years time we won't worry so much about these details because convenience always wins. That's why we're on
Yeah.
the internet talking to each other, instead of going to Brazil. So,
Yeah, like another thing that I find really interesting is when I did the IELTS, the proficiency exam, I just had 2 years speaking English. When I moved to Ireland when I was 26. Yeah, for who is your student here in your life, I'm Gabi, I'm from Brazil, and today we're going to talk about self-confidence.
mm.
I don't know how to pin the subject here, do you know?
Yeah, sure. If you so for example, I'll write self-confidence, and if you touch it, it should come up with pin comment,
Oh, okay.
or
Did
hold
you
it
write
down
it?
maybe.
Okay, let me see.
And it'll come up.
Okay, pin comment. I did it.
That's
As
it.
you see, like some very silly things that we think we should know, and I didn't know this, and I do lives for a long time.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, I learned like small things all the time. Like I didn't know until recently that you could use photos on the iPhone in your live. So I started playing with that. That's quite useful.
Oh, just from the iPhone.
Oh, I don't know if, have you got an Android? I don't think it works on Android,
Yeah, I
but
just have Android. I have a
yeah.
Pixel, Google.
I see. So I know for a fact on iPhone it does.
Yeah, so one interesting thing that I knew that time that I had no idea was many native speakers couldn't get a good result, in this exam, and I was just like, why? Like, and then I stopped thinking, like, I stopped to think, like, it's like in Brazil, like we speak Portuguese here, and it's a very, very like difficult language to learn. Maybe like Japanese. You speak Japanese, yeah?
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, and here in Brazil, like we have many people that cannot speak good Portuguese. It's normal, but they can communicate themselves really well.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, and this thing about learning good English, I think it's all around the world. Yeah, like everyone thinks they should speak correctly. And one thing that nobody thinks, it's about nations as well. Like
Mm.
sometimes people think English speakers as the superior nations, of course, like the US economically, you know, the UK. And also we just think like, oh, it's like, oh, I need to look good. I need to speak very well. And we never stop and think like, oh, we just need to communicate, and that's a lot easier than just try to make a good impression, because the more you try to be to look good, the worse it gets. Like, oh, thinking about the rules, you know, like, oh, how to say this, how to say that. And then when
Yeah.
you naturally don't commit the mistakes, I think what happens is like you end up not communicating yourself well. Like you let communication here and perfection here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I agree. This is what my post was about, really. Like it was about, unfortunately, many learners don't want to speak, which is a problem. And it's a lack of confidence, unfortunately. And I think that comes from worrying about making a mistake. But in reality, we don't remember any of it. You know, it's just, I'm worried about my bills. I'm worried about my relationship. I'm worried about my kids. I'm not worried
Just because
about
you were
what's.
native, you know.
It's not though. Because like, even when two non-natives are speaking, do you remember what someone said to you last week? You know, you don't. You just
Well,
don't remember the details. So I think that we, as a person, ourselves, we remember the moment in ourselves. Yeah, but I'm talking about the other person. They do not remember. You know, they do not remember. Their life goes forward, and that's just a moment. When we speak to someone, it's just a moment. So, you know.
yeah, like as a non-native person, I would say, even as being, I'm a teacher because I don't have like the graduation to be a teacher. I just have the experience, and I lived in other countries. And before this live, I was talking with my boyfriend. He's American, and I was asking him like, "Oh, can you just make sure about this expression? Like the expression is get rid of negative people and self-talk, negative self-talk." So I was just making sure that this expression was like get rid of.
Mm.
And then I'm, as a non-native person, we kind of worry, like even me talking about this subject doesn't mean that I'm fully self-confident. It doesn't mean that I am. I grow it, I grew it from training, I grew it from repeating, and I learn how to deal with when I make mistakes. Like I accept that I'm going to make them, and that's
But
something that I need to live with.
exactly, this is an important point. Buddy, sorry, one person keeps on a comment. You can just message me and I can help you if you want help. So basically, you're completely right. What you said is great because you learn to get past it, yeah? And you learn that you have to make mistakes. And the one thing I always say, maybe if there's anyone in here that has followed me for a while, we don't have an eraser when we speak. So you can't go back and fix it. It's done. It's finished. You've made the error. So why continuously worry about it? Just the biggest, people want to become fluent in English. This is super important. People want to become fluent. I get that. But you can't become fluent if you pause. If you pause all the time and try to think over every detail.
When you
For
say
example,
pause, is like mean like in front of the
so
mirror
like many,
posing.
many people who are unconfident, they get into a conversation, then they freeze. For someone said freeze earlier because they have a similar situation to yourself. They have an American partner, and whenever they speak to them, they feel like they must pronounce every word perfectly. But here's the ironic thing: there's no perfect pronunciation in English because there's so many varieties. So as long as you're clear, that's the most important thing on that one. Like, as long as the clarity's there and people understand, that's probably the most important thing, not the exact pronunciation of every single thing. Because root and route, vitamin and
Root.
vitamin, they're both correct, you know. So how can you win as a non-native? You can't win if you stick to one, you know. So I think these worries install in the person, and then they're very unconfident from there, you know, and they come into a
Hey,
conversation,
people.
and then they sorry, I can't stop talking sometimes, so tell me when to stop, please.
No, I'm saying hey, like people that I know, they're saying hey, and I do like these in the lives because I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, cool. That's great. That's awesome. I love it. So yeah, I think they pause when they speak. Many learners, they get nervous and they pause, and all of that vocabulary that they should know, they forget in a moment. But so do I.
Yeah, like you forget words as well. Of course,
Yeah,
I
of
forget
course.
words in my language. Of course.
Yeah, because
What I mean is like something interesting is like I study a bit of neuroscience, and our brains are programmed to do things better when we're relaxed. So whenever we get like tense, our muscles start to be tense, we forget things. It's automatic. It's a defense of our brain. Like, you know, I need to spend energy freezing, you know, like because I'm in a tense situation. So something that I learned, and I have lived in Ireland 2 years. I have been to Germany, but when I went to the US, the accent was very different. Like I'm used to your
yeah,
accent, British, Irish, and then when I met my boyfriend's family, I started feeling like, oh my God, I can't understand so well. And then I started being very nervous in the beginning. And then I kept explaining myself to them, like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, and sometimes I didn't understand like fully of the conversation, just 95%. And then I start asking like, oh, what is this word? Can you repeat for me? And then it started becoming more like better, natural, and they could help me when I started like showing my fear, like, oh, look, of course I'm not a native. I learned English for 5 years just now, you know, and it's I like English very much. Yeah, and it's something that happens with me. It still happens. Like I'm telling you, before this live, I was just like, oh my God, how about this expression? I don't want to be live and telling something wrong, you know. So
yeah,
you're doing such a great job in your Instagram. Every time that I watch you in lives, I don't know if this because if you're a man, you're very relaxed. So every time you just pass the students, like, no, like, they talk to me, you know, make mistakes, come to me, make mistakes, it's fine, you know.
yeah. I mean, like, there's someone pointed out, like, I say that a lot, make mistakes, but when I mean that, I don't mean like literally read the wrong, like, study material, then don't use it correctly. That's not what I mean by that, you know. I just mean if you make a mistake, it's not a problem. It just is. When you go to work for the first time, in your first day of your job, you make a million mistakes, but you forget in a year's time because you're way better at your job. And English is the same, and learning, it's just a bit longer time. That's all. Just a longer time. That is it. There's always going to be errors. And I mean, the fluency thing always kills me. People think like English, 100% of English, and you can get 100% fluent in all of English. When I'm a native speaker, and I'm not fluent in every part of English. If we talked about scientific terms, it's not my forte. It's not something I've practiced. I haven't gone to university to learn everything about neuroscience. Is a good example. Although I have a little knowledge, I don't know that much. So if we talk about specific things, maybe I'm lost in the conversation because of the vocabulary and the terminology. So that is an area I'm not fluent in, you could say. Instead of saying, like, I prefer not to think of the English, the whole thing, as fluent. I prefer to think like, am I fluent in everyday conversation? Yes. Okay, great. Am I fluent in speaking about sports? Yeah, great. You know, that kind of way. It's a bit more manageable for the learner then, you know. rather than, it's such a difficult task, isn't it, to try and be fluent in everything. It's crazy.
Of course, unless you were a person that needs to be fluent in that subject. So you will study exactly, like study the vocabulary you need, and maybe you won't be fluent in basic stuff like sports, as people say, talking about sports is easy. Depends. If it's something that you like, you be in touch with, you will watch content about it, you talk about it. So another thing that people forget is like consuming the content about things that you want to be better at. Like I started watching Grey's Anatomy,
Good
and
choice.
I didn't understand a lot of things because it's medical terms and I don't know them even in Portuguese. So sometimes I was like, is that a word I should know? I was like, no, I'm not going to use this
But,
word. So my brain's full. I don't want to record this word, you know?
so this is a super interesting thing. What you said there is great. Like you say, you don't know it in your native tongue. So do you need it?
No.
So I always say that native speakers probably use 1,000 to 1,500 words in 85% of their conversations. So this extra terminology is really specific conversation then. But as a learner, how many times, if a native speaker doesn't use it that much and the conversations do not come up that much, how many times is a non-native going to have that conversation with a native speaker? Because we go through the first steps, like what's your name and where you're from, what's your hobbies. These are all stuff you can practice and you can get better at because they're things you like or dislike, you know. But like global warming, yeah, maybe that's a little tough, you know. So I kind of think there's so much pressure on learners because they see so much to learn, which I get. But I don't know if there is a subject in the world that you can 100%, because everything evolves at some point. Even history, yeah? Even going back to history, we find out something new when it's dug up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
English as well has so much words like borrowed. Is that right? Say borrowed from other
Or,
language?
yeah, that's right.
Borrowed. Yeah, like I was talking about one expression before, like this live as well. Surround yourself with positive people, like not people that keep criticizing you.
Mm.
And then he asked me, like, oh, how would you say if you would say? I say surround is like it's a word that I don't talk a lot. This word surround. It's like I would say like be around, like.
Sure.
And some words in English are like when we have our mother tongue, we have let's say phrasal verbs is something I think it's very English stuff. Yeah, it's like very about English. Like in America they use more phrasal verbs than in the UK. I don't know why. And then there, when I arrived there, I didn't know many of these phrasal verbs. Like even today, I can't. I don't know why I can't memorize phrasal verbs very well. So I always use the words more similar to the Portuguese, like the Latin language, you know.
Sure. So
So
that's important what you said. Again, great point. Because we sometimes English is overcomplicated. You know, I think like phrasal verbs and idioms are not a necessity. They're just things you should know about, but you don't necessarily need to use, you know. There's other ways of saying. English has so many ways of saying one thing. It's ridiculous, really. Like there's too much. Like the word great has like 50 different ways to say great, you know. It literally is like that. And each, I always, like, for me, I say lush. Lush is my version of great because I studied in Wales and everyone said lush. But where I'm
lush,
from, yeah, Lush, lush.
lush.
Yeah, and then
So
in,
lush hair.
yeah, oh, your hair is lush. Yeah, exactly. Yes, that sounds strange, yeah. And then
Yeah,
in London,
I have some lush hair around here, though.
yeah, so it's that kind of, and then in London, it's like class is the word, you know, so
Class.
that, yeah, class means great. And then wicked is another one. And then, so there's so much. It's just good to have your base, work out what your base is, and then be aware of everything. And if you can, do like you say, just translate from your own language, as long as it sounds correct. Even if it doesn't sound correct, you can still converse with someone, you know, but eventually you want to build from that, don't you, and perfect the sentence structure, etc.
Yeah, like you say, like if you learn lash, but you know gray, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like another word that I find interesting is I wanted to say these days that I was like crying a lot about laugh after a movie. So I'm tearing up, like
Yeah, sure.
tearing up. And then I say, why tearing up, not tearing apart? And then I recorded in my mind tearing apart, and I spoke this, and it's like, no, it's tearing up. It's like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm
sure.
crying a lot, like, oh, super moved. I don't know. There's so many expressions that I would say for like tearing up. How would you say this one? Tearing up.
Probably tearing up, to be honest with you, is the one I would
Yeah.
use. Yeah. Even just, I would probably say something as I actually used it the other day. Someone said something really nice to me, and then like I'm kind of emotional sometimes. So like I kind of, if I felt that emotion that they put in, and I was like, I think I used tearing up actually. That's funny. But even I'm starting to, well up is another one.
Well
Well,
up.
yeah, well up. It sounds really strange, that one, but that's really common in Britain. But yeah,
Oh,
well up.
really? I didn't know this. Well up. I have difficulties with this L. I'm relearning, to be honest. Can I say this word? Relearning?
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, sure.
Also, well. So I need to train a lot this little, because
Yeah,
in my language it's like will. We say
yeah,
will,
yeah, 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 yeah.
will. So
Mm.
my boyfriend often is correcting me. I ask him like, tell me, will, like will, so
Yeah,
well
that's
off. I did
yeah,
your quiz yesterday, and I
yeah.
was making so much mistakes. I was just like, oh my God.
Sure. But like the R and the L is something in most languages as well. That R and the L difference. So in Japan, we have the same issue. They just have a different position in the mouth. That's it. So they're like in the middle of the two. So it's really awful for them. So they can't say R properly. They can't say L properly because they're like their tongue structure is like in the center of the mouth instead of at the back or at the front.
I
So
know, like my name is Gabriela, and they speak Gaburuera, yeah?
yeah,
Gaburuera is the syllabus. Yeah, I know. I knew this in Japan. My best
yeah,
friend is Japanese, so I have some words that I know, but it's kind of tough language as well as Mandarin. Yeah, it's like you need to write. You even have words that doesn't exist in other language. Like, what is this like symbol? Like, oh, you don't have it in English, even in other language. So sometimes we miss translation as well. Like, it's another great thing that I was remembering now. This thing of trying to translate exactly, like don't understand the structure of English, and trying to think that everything is going to be similar, like from your mother tongue. Like
mm,
when I speak like Spanish, I have notions of German, some French, and English. So the
mm,
more the languages you learn, the more you can recognize when a person is trying to speak like Portuguese in English, French in English. And when we accept that the language works in a different way, it's easier to learn. Like that's the way English works, so that's the way you're going to speak.
yeah,
It
yeah. Because
becomes
each one,
easier, like flowing.
yeah, no, you're 100% right. Each one has its own special thing about it, So yeah, it's better to think of it that way for sure. Someone said, how should they explain? How can they? How can I explain that? How can they show themselves, their presentation, like the way they speak? How can they speak confidently? What do you think? How can they? What did you do? So you're on the live with me, yeah. So
Me,
maybe
oh,
so
I have a.
when you first started speaking, did you think to yourself you would be doing an Insta live with another person in front of many people
Well,
speaking
I
English?
will show it for a person. I think it's easier when you show. Like,
Sure.
just a minute. You see here,
Hmm.
self-confidence, negative self-talk, surround yourself, trust your ability, look in front of the mirror. So I prepared my speech, and it doesn't mean I'm going to speak everything that I prepared, but I try to at least have a notion of the things I was going to say. Like, and I didn't say a lot. Like right now, sometimes the speech goes in a different way. Like as I have a bit of practice, I feel the person before speaking, and so sometimes we prepare the speech, and it's not that it's not valid. Now I don't know this what to say.
Valid, that's right.
It's not valid for like a university, but we're doing live. It's kind of informal here. But if you have a speech in the university, it happened to me already. I prepare the things and I put bullets with the topics, and each topic that you need to talk, you should have a notion at least of the vocabulary. You know, you should train in front of the mirror, talk to yourself, talk to another person, ask a friend to listen to you, a person that understands English, and train. You know, train 100 times. Like keep training, and it's not just about practice; it's about persistence as well. Like. Because how many times can you make mistakes without giving up or judging yourself with the negative self-talk, like, oh my God, I'm bad. That's why I say you need the positive people. Like they will tell you, no, it's normal, come on. Because we all have this voice like, oh, I'm not good.
Well, yeah, you're right. But I really believe that voice isn't us, you know. We're not born with that voice in our head saying, you're not very good at this, you're not very good at that. It's other people, you know, and they just stay there. But then we think it's ourselves saying it in the back of our mind. It's almost like just we're recalling someone speaking to us, someone in the past at school who said, you're not very good at this, or, and that is kind of, yeah. It is kind of because we always remember those memories, don't we? We always remember those negative experiences.
Yeah, they stick in our minds more than the positive, I would say.
And then
because they hurt us, like it's like a wound, like exactly. No, like
and
it hurted you.
I think over time we're thinking that it's us saying that, but I don't actually think it is us. Originally, the original source is someone else, because we don't say to ourselves as a baby, "You suck at walking," you know, something like that. Do you get what I mean? Like we don't say that. It's just like information. This is all this information we get. So I think it's just we like take it on as ourselves, and it's like one of the biggest problems in self-confidence for speaking, for sure.
And I wouldn't say it's I wouldn't blame the educators or the parents, but many times the educators, the coach, the parents, the senseis we have in our lives, they don't have the exactly like ability to make to light the good things on us. They just say, oh, you're bad, and they stick with bad. I was watching the TED Talks before our live now, and then I will post it for people, part of it. He says like when you were an educator, when you were a coach, you were a sensei, you should know how to motivate your students. You shouldn't be enlightening all the time, like, that's not the right way. No, you shouldn't keep correcting your students, but you should like catch them when they're good, when they make good things, like, that's great, you know, like, sometimes our coach, I believe, as being an educator now, I think we have a huge importance in this, like, childhood, you know, parents, because sometimes they just don't know how to do it in a good way. They just say like, oh, you're shit, don't do it. Like, that's something that we just record in our minds, like, oh, I'm not good. So I know that's something about humans. Our nature is like criticize the students, but when we learn to do it in a better way, like, that's great, correct, like, do again, and not really like paying attention in the mistakes, they will start being a lot more like encouraged, motivated, like, you know, like more, they start feeling better to do the stuff, like not to do this stuff, to speak what they really want. And we are not going to highlight the mistakes anymore. Just say like, oh, that's correct, that's good, you did good, and not talking just about the bad things. I think these bad things just stick on our minds, and it's just like, oh, they say I'm bad, like, you know. So I think as a coach, our work is just, it's important in this part, like, find a good coach for you as well, you know.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You know, this is super interesting. I love this kind of psychological side of things. I think it's really really interesting in all my jobs. Like I've been some kind of coach or manager or trying to help someone at some point, you know, like learn something new throughout the whole of my time of working. And I find that the psychological side is super interesting. And you have to, as a teacher, this is the difficult part. I'm going to be 100% honest. As a teacher, you have to be humble enough to say that you're wrong, you know, because you haven't been able to teach that person correctly. Because that everyone, this is where like that TED talk falls apart a bit for me, because everyone learns differently. So as a teacher, one of the things that's happened from the past, from my teachers that I've had as a kid, they taught the way that they preferred to be taught themselves. But every kid in the classroom of 30 does not like that way, you know. So we have to be humble enough to say, actually, that doesn't work for that person, you know, and I need to think of a different way, and not just stop, you know, and then say that that isn't, what they're doing is not good. Because I love the phrase, there's no such thing as a bad student, it's a bad teacher at some point, you know. There's like, you can pull that apart a little bit, and someone might not study, okay, that's their kind of part as well. At this, we're doing adults, so it's a bit different, but you know, and at the end of the day, we try and give the message across somehow, and that's how we do that. Is the most important thing. Is it clear? Is it precise? I mean, like I teach many students who don't speak much English, so I have to work out ways around the usual, like the terminologies, you know, and try and simplify everything and not use so much high level language to try and get across the point, you know. And we really have to kind of bend. And it's not all speaking, and sometimes people don't like listening, they want to do, and some people like to read, you know. There's so many different styles, so it's super
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's so interesting you're saying this, because I was doing a big research about Dutch people speak really good English, you know, yeah. And it's given because the way they teach English in the Netherlands, they do it in a ludic way. Do you have this word in English? Yeah, ludic.
Maybe I've never heard of it, but it's possible. 100%.
That's Latin, maybe. They teach it in a very didactic way.
Okay, yes, sure.
Yeah, this word is confusing in Portuguese, because didactic can be used for adults in Portuguese. And I learned that this word is more for kids in English, yeah?
Yeah.
So they teach, it's like a bit of a theater, you know, like a kind of like a drawing and doing like fantasies. They don't teach English as a subject. And that's great, because it's about communication, it's about expression. So I think teaching English it's been improving with time now, because they're not treating, it's no longer a subject as maths, you know, as a story. It's about communication, it's about expression. So it's a lot more psychological than, I think, some skill that you can say like it's full percent reason. I don't think it's just about brains. It's also about emotions, you know, like having emotional attachment with the language. The way I learned was very funny, because I was 26. Today I'm 31. And I arrived to, I was doing my master's degree in Brazil in management, business management. If you guys have questions, just maybe ask more than once, because we're going to answer as well.
Once we get to this point, we can go back a bit. I think there's a couple.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
Yeah, he say, what an introvert people, how could they improve their confidence speaking in front of a gathering? Yeah, I will talk about it now. So I'm an introvert as well. So I always felt very awkward in front of people, like sweating hands when I needed to do my stuff in the university. When I was going to present my, you know, the work that you do in the end of the course, how can you call it in English?
What? God, it's been a long time since I've used that word, but it's
doesn't matter.
Thesis, but yeah, sure. I know
It's like
exactly.
it's like the job that you need to do. You see people, native or non, we forget the word. I forgot the word. So
Mm.
we needed to present this work in the end of the course, and I was sweating my hands. I was like, oh my God, Jesus Christ, my mother language. And can you imagine in English? It's even worse. So I arrived to the coordinator of the course and say, I'm 26 now, and I don't know English. I'm finishing this master's degree, and the market wants me to speak, and I don't know if I want to keep or if I wanted finances. And he say like, Gabi, just go, live abroad, have a relationship in English. And that's where I started, loving in English, like getting emotion in English, encouraged me to keep. So that's the way I started learning. So by an attachment, which something I couldn't learn from schools before. No one could light this thing inside me, like, oh, I have a relationship with a guy and then I'm going to start speaking more. So that's why I started learning, I confess, because of emotions. So this
Yeah.
introvert person here is asking, how about an introvert? How could they improve their confidence speaking in front of gathering or meeting? In the same way, find your emotional reasons, like find
Mm.
what makes you motivated, like why do you
Dissertation,
for
that's the word.
for people to start. I always tell my students, why do you want to learn English? Why is English important for you? Because if it's just an
Mm.
obligation, it's going to be
Yes.
a lot harder than just a wish, right?
But I think dissertation is the word I was thinking of anyway. Um, so yeah, nice. Thank you very much. That guy knows so much vocabulary. It's crazy. So yeah, I completely agree. Like, I think
Yeah.
if we're talking about without the emotional attachment, because like you say, that is important. I think it can definitely speed up, as in emotional attachment with a friend as well, or someone who speaks English or is learning English. That can definitely speed things up because then you're like together, two people doing it, or you want to do it for a reason, having an emotional attachment to an end goal. But if
I
without
think it
that,
just makes you more relaxed in the way we were saying, like you were
yeah,
tense because sometimes you were just doing because your job is asking for, because the market is asking for. But if you stop and think like, why do I want it? If you find an attachment, it's going to be easier as well. Like our brain relates emotions with processes. So emotion is the glue. I always say emotion is the glue to speed up. But if you don't have emotional reasons, you can learn as well, but it's going to be more tense. It's going to be more obligation. And expression is not about, expression is different than maths. It's not about doing a calculation. It's about showing yourself, sending a message for the public. So that's why I think emotions are important, in my opinion.
I want to go back to this introvert word actually, because I wonder if this person is mistaking introvert for unconfident, because introvert in your own language is quite likely that you wouldn't try to speak out in a meeting or a gathering if you're an introvert. So, those situations also, as an introvert, you probably wouldn't be putting yourself out. So is it more unconfident really? Because if you're unconfident or if you're an introvert as well, the easiest way to get better in those situations is by pushing yourself to speak, to at least practice. The minimum is what you suggested earlier. Practice in front of a mirror, know what you want to say, or know the topic, at least have some knowledge on it, because we are always better when we have knowledge about what we want to speak about. And that goes with, like we said, the first day of your job, you're not confident because you don't know anything, and then a year later you're very confident because you know everything. So it's all practice, I think.
Yeah, and another thing that I would say for, like, if you were an introvert, or usually introverts are a bit unconfident as well. They go together.
Yeah, hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, but sometimes an introvert, it's just because you don't feel well when you have like to interact. We spend energy by interacting, and an
Mm.
extrovert gains energy by interacting. So it's like going to a marathon. You know it's going to be tiring, so you should prepare yourself, like a train
Mm.
before, like breathe properly, like training a lot. It's what decides if an athlete is going to be successful. What is he doing? Like the
Yeah,
more
practice.
times you train, practice, repetition, training, repetition, practice, it's going to give you confidence. Like you have done it before, so it's not a big deal for you anymore. Like do it in front of other people. When I wanted to be a coach, like I started offering lectures for free, like, oh, can I do a lecture here for this group? So I started in random groups. So I gave my speech for them, and I started giving it for free. And then people wanted to pay me for it because I was doing good. I was training, like, oh, I've been there, I've been there. But
That's
in the
great.
beginning, as I say, I started sweating hands and like, I'm on good. I haven't done a speech in English, I think, but I'm willing to do anytime. Like, offer it for
You're doing
free.
one now, yeah?
Who wants my speech? And then I will do it. Like, and I'll be nervous. I know I will call my
Mm.
boyfriend before. I was like, oh my god, let me train.
Yeah, sure. But you're doing it now, This is a speech, there's people watching. It's just we can't see them, So it's a similar kind of situation. But yeah, I think practice is very useful. It's always useful, in Japan, there's still, in many Asian countries actually, they still think like textbook is the only thing you need to practice to get good at a language. What we were talking about earlier. And
People were saying here, hey fellas, how are you? We are paying attention in you as well,
yeah,
but
we
it's
see
hard
it.
to talk and pay attention at the same time.
Mm. Yeah,
Do you
they
think we could open the chat a bit for people to
yeah,
ask
yeah,
for
of
us?
course. Yeah. Please, like when anyone wants to put in a question, please fire away. If it can be kept around about the topic of self-confidence, that'd be great. Yeah,
So
but yeah,
this is the guy of the expression, great chin wig ever. I don't know what is this chin wig. What is
chinwag
that?
is a chap.
Chin
It
wag.
means, yeah, it's British English. Chinwag.
Oh yeah, this guy is Jonathan is a big fan of British accent, so he knows everything.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. But yeah. Any questions? Please put them in. Please. That's what we're here for. Yeah. And we'll get to them as soon as they come in from now.
Yeah, so you can keep talking. I just stopped to say like, oh, ask you about.
Yeah, please. No, that's fine. So yeah, in Japan anyway, they do textbook learning, so it's all textbook based, and they really struggle to speak
Really?
because
Oh, it's all textbook.
it's all textbook, and there's
Textbook.
yeah, and there's I think if you really want to be good at English, you have to hit all four pillars. Like in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. You can't just do one. It depends what your goal is. If your goal is just to send emails, then you could just practice writing, but it's and
Nobody
reading.
wants this. Yeah.
Exactly. So most of it's communication, and I think it's crazy that speaking is the last thing on people's mind. It should be the first if communication is the point. How do you put students under good habits in order to acquire the language? That's a great question. So for me, most of the time it's just to build their confidence to know that they can speak English, and then the good habits come. To be honest, like half the time people are so negative about themselves without even taking the steps to practice properly that they
I
don't
let them make mistakes,
feel.
I encourage them to speak in the beginning and I don't correct them.
Yeah, same, because it could be an inconsistency. They could say the structure correctly 9 times out of 10 and they do it wrong that one time. That's crazy to tell them they're doing terrible, because like it's just once out of that
Yeah,
10.
I tell them, and I also that I let them know that I'm not going to correct them in the beginning because it's a part of the process not correcting them.
100%.
So and they say, so are you going to let me learn wrong? No, I'm going to let you get confidence first, and then you correct yourself. You will realize, because I asked them to record themselves as well.
Good. That's fantastic, because that should be done way more often.
Yeah. So I encourage them speaking since the very first level, you know, very first level. It's like, this word is the way you pronounce, and you're going to say, my name is Joanna. My name is Joanna. My name is Joanna. So every day I say, hello, how are you? And like, that's a basic one, but like this one, how are you? I'm fine, and you? Oh, I'm doing great. So every day I want a new one. I want every day to listen from my students. And I want them to tell me like, tell me how was your day? Send me an audio. Every single day I say, I push them to do, but they don't do always. No.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I think one thing we are bad at in the English teaching world is assessing speaking regularly. So like, and even not just an assessment like a test, but even the, like you say, the learner self-assessing themselves and seeing the change from day 1 to day 30 to day 60, you know, because that can be
Yeah, I
such
do exactly these to measure. Like I ask them to say this exactly the same stuff. Usually I use the presentation, like, hello, I'm Gabriela, I'm 31. And then he asked, like, do you have a table or chart in order to measure their time with the target language? Yeah, usually I ask students to build a target before, like, let's say, first questions, why do you want to learn English? What's your goal? And then, like, how long do you want to learn it? Like, you're not in a hurry, like, are you in 3 months, you want to be able to speak these? And say sometimes we put a target. I do. That's why I say it's a more coach work. And then we're going to train that stuff. Like you need to be able to present yourself in 3 months. Like, it's a very long one. But present yourself in a month. So we record this in the beginning of the month, and then we do again in the middle, and then we're going to correct after they do a few times. And then in the end of the same month, we're going to record the same audio and compare, like, look, how you were speaking this time and how you're speaking right now,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And they must hear the first one or the previous one to see, you know, and then it can be used as a way to show them, okay, so, because one time they might not do better than the previous one because they've had a bad day. We forget about these things as well. We have feelings, you know, we have arguments with people. There's so much excess noise. And just because we have one bad day of learning doesn't mean we're terrible at English or we're going backwards. It's just super unlucky, you know, and then the next day can be better.
Yeah, and that's a good one. Usually I don't pick the day they're going to do something. I ask them to send, and then I will compare, you know, like eventually this with this one. So you do this again for me. But sometimes people get nervous when they need to perform well. So I also analyze a lot of these. Like I'm not gonna ask you to do like a exam or something like this, but just let's talk relaxing, you know. And then I encourage them to do it more times, and then finally you find one to compare, like, look how much you improved in a month, you know.
That's really, really good. Like, that's quite advanced teaching technique. You know, there's like many different sides to teaching. There's like the knowledge, there's communication, and then there's the techniques we use to teach. And like, you can be very good in certain areas. You don't have to be totally high in all of them. You know, communication and teaching techniques are just as important as knowledge, and especially like trying to push to help the person learn. So that is really, really interesting, because you're really thinking about the psychology behind it, which is important for those, especially those people who are not very confident, which is quite a lot of people. So these measures are really important, I think.
I know, because I don't know if I am still, but I was used to be one of these people, when I'm still doing the process, you know.
This is a great thing, a great experience to have. Maybe,
Yes.
maybe day one, like, you're worried about everyone who you're speaking to, but now, like, that experience was great. Yeah, that that 5 bad experiences 10 years ago was great, because now you can tell someone about it, you know. And that's what I
Yeah,
love about it. It's
it's
so
like the
like
skin
moving
in the
someone
game,
else.
yeah.
It's so good. Honestly, it's so good. Like, that's the kind of crazy thing. Just imagine in like a year's time, you forget all the bad things, or you laugh at the bad things. That's the best part. You laugh at them, you know.
Yeah.
So if you're consistent, you have to be. This consistency is really key for learning language. You know?
So there's a few more questions here. Wait.
Yes.
It's for you. This is for you, Sensei. Oh, wait. Well, I lost the question here, I think.
So there's one that's while you're doing that, I'll just read a different one. So according to BBC, on the 23rd of July 2013, it would take, I can't see the number in the middle. I got this massive line on my screen where my screen's cracked. So maybe 360 or 300 hours. I can't read it. 300 hours to acquire English language. Let's say between B2 and C1. What?
Yeah, 360 hours.
Potentially.
That's a pattern measurement, but I believe that people can suppress it or people can, you know, need more. So it's just a measurement. Yeah, we need to measure. Like, as I said, I don't think language is something that you can exactly treat as another subject, but we have the measurements. Yeah.
I don't think you can quantify it. You're right. Like have like an exact number because everyone's different and it depends. You could have 360 hours of reading a textbook when you don't like learning via textbook. So it may not benefit you, you know, so you can speed these things up or slow them down, like you say, depending on the way that you learn. And I think it's super, super interesting. Psychology of learning is so interesting.
Yeah, I think in the future that we realize that emotions has play a big role in the learning process because as far as I know and I have experienced, emotions can spoil your learning and they can speed up as well. So I think these measurements will start changing in the future and we will have another factors that's not just a reason and maths, and they will become more like oh, how do you feel when you're doing these? Like, you know, because I learned really fast. I consider that I learned really fast when I was blocked as well. You know, I was a person, I was blocked. And I lost opportunities, you know, I don't tell it very often to people, but I lost job opportunities because I couldn't speak English. I did, you know, the processes of selective processes for work. So I remember I lost many opportunities, like 4 opportunities, because I couldn't speak English. I couldn't do the exam. So I was one of the persons that my story with English is not everybody say like, oh, I love English since I was a child. No, for me it was painful. It was like really hard as well, you know. So I know how the students feel. That's why I decided to help them.
What you said there is crazy though, because you can't, you know, I don't see in anything we do in life, anything at all, you love something, but there's always trials and tribulations, you know, there's always something. I love football, but my football team are rubbish. So they're painful every week I watch them, you know, but I still love it. So people love the romance of loving English, but they don't like, you know, it's psychology again. People don't like to show their weakness, you know, and if they don't like a part of, or they don't want to show the weak part of their journey, I think once you release all of that weakness, you're a much better learner because there's no pressure inside you. It's gone. All that poison that really affects your learning.
I had anger inside me before, like, God, I'm never gonna learn it. Shit.
Exactly. Yeah. And you almost need to release that, you know, get rid of it, and then you can start to build again. You need to, that pressure in everything, whether you've had an argument with your partner or you don't like your job or something. If you don't talk about it, it really destroys like part of your day. You already wake up, like we kind of come full circle. We're talking about like mindset at the start. So if you have like a bad moment with your partner and you don't talk about it, then that's in your back of your head somewhere. and that can affect your decision making for the rest of the day, and then affect your learning. If we're talking about English, it can really do. Like those
Yeah,
out
yeah, it's true.
courses is crazy.
Yeah, one of the things they say it's really important, like a scientific resource, is to be relaxed, to not be worried. So yeah, when I got rid of the anger, you know, I could finally start learning. But yeah, I was a very angry person. Like, are you?
Should I
I
be
wouldn't.
scared?
Huh?
Should I be scared?
No, I mean I was really angry because I couldn't learn. I was angry at myself. Like,
Yeah.
why I can't? Like, I was really frustrated with this, and it was quite late as well, like 26 years old.
And we like think it's going back to the voices in your head in a way. We think it's us that's the problem, but we just haven't been shown the correct way that works for us, you know?
Yeah, exactly. What works for
Yeah.
you? Yeah, that's the most important because again, I tell students I don't have nothing against the schools, but schools they just put in you in a box, and they suppose that everyone is going to learn in the same way, and that's not true. So when you have a good teacher, this teacher is going to be able to make you your best version in learning. Like, what's the best way you learn? And then you are going to finally use all this potential, because your coach will understand how to train your skills and how to, you know, how can I say, shape you to be your best. You have your best, how can I say, performance, yeah, at learning, you know. So I'm more in favor of one-to-one sessions when you really want to improve than going to school. School doesn't have you as a they're a priority. They are also like they need the profit, and they need to do it in a group. So it doesn't really
they're
work.
trying to fix the masses, you know, and at least get a base for everyone. So there's good things, I think, like at least there's something. There's better than zero, you know, always there's stuff better than zero. But yeah, always progression is greater on a one-on-one situation. But this is really fascinating. I love this kind of conversation. I love psychology. I don't normally talk to many people, but it's really fascinating for me. So
I love it as well. I'm all about neuroscience, human behavior, and I apply it in other contexts. You know, I'm from finances here, and that's also why I'm saying this, because I always try to find the best investment with the lower cost. So I always analyze the cost benefit of going to school. You know, and then if you calculate how long would you get to, you know, to learn that. The same context in the school, you always end up like, oh no, I'm going to contract a coach and maybe do less classes per week, and you know, and finally say, no, now I'm having the improvement I wanted, and not just you know, not because it's a franchise and I'm going to pay for a model, but I'm going to pay for a coach to prepare me for this stuff, you know.
Yeah, I think like a teacher is, again, we're going back to convenience. A teacher is convenient because they direct you, and and you can practice speaking with them, which is most important for many countries, because there's no one to speak that can just say, this is incorrect. You need to fix, this is where you're weakest at, look at that. You know, when you study. I always say, like, everything is available. It's all on the internet. You know, we're lucky these days. You can go to Mother Google, type in whatever you want, and get the answer. Is there. It's just there's no direction, and that's what the teacher does. They direct you into the place where you need to focus the most, and it's really important, I think. But like I say, everything's out there. There's even language partners. You can find anything you need to improve your English. But yeah, teacher's very, very useful for direction. Super interesting.
I think we have just one more minute. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, me too. Thank you for having me here
on your profile. Yeah, it's no worries. You can stay on your profile. No, it's okay. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
For having me here. A good joke. So if you guys want to ask anything for us, just please feel free to send messages after this live.
Yeah,
Or
please, anytime. Yeah, I love it. So
yeah, and feel free as well, teacher, if you want to have more chats. I think this quarantine is teaching a lot of for teachers as well. Like we could do this more time. So 26 seconds.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I completely agree. Yeah, 100%. That's cool. Uncle Google, apparently, someone said. That's cool.
Yeah, that's it, people. So thank you for all. Thank you all. Thank you, teacher. And yeah, 6 seconds. You're going to like get out.
Okay, great. Cheers.